The flight was nearing its end, and the hum of the engines filled the cabin with a steady, almost hypnotic rhythm. Outside the small oval windows, the sky was a deep, calming blue, scattered with wisps of clouds that glowed softly as the sun began its descent. Every passenger was buckled in, some staring out at the horizon, others fidgeting nervously with their seatbelts, unaware of just how tense the cockpit had been moments ago. Amelia sat there, her hands lightly resting on the controls, yet every nerve in her body was on high alert. Her face was still pale from the adrenaline that had surged through her just minutes earlier. She could feel her heart beating in her chest like a drum, a rhythm that matched the steady whir of the engines, though far more erratic in its own way. Each blink seemed heavy, as if her eyelids themselves were carrying the weight of the flight and the responsibility she had held in those critical moments. Around her, the cockpit was quiet but tense. The instruments glowed softly, green and amber lights casting a subdued, almost ethereal glow across the panels. Switches clicked faintly under her fingertips as she double-checked systems, ensuring that nothing was amiss. The gentle hum of the plane was both comforting and maddening. She wanted it to be louder, to drown out the echo of her racing thoughts, but the calm of the cabin only amplified her inner turmoil. She could still feel the memory of every sudden jerk, every moment of uncertainty, replaying in her mind. The passengers might have felt relief, but Amelia knew how close they had come, how easily things could have spiraled out of control if not for her focus and training. As the plane descended smoothly toward the runway, Amelia glanced sideways at her co-pilot. His eyes met hers briefly, and there was an unspoken acknowledgement of the ordeal they had just navigated. It was as if no words could capture the intensity of the past few hours, the countless calculations, the split-second decisions that had kept everyone safe. She could see a flicker of relief in his expression, though he, like her, could not fully relax yet. The tension lingered, an invisible weight pressing against the cockpit walls, reminding them that even though the plane was landing safely, the experience would not fade immediately. Below, the airport stretched out in neat lines and runways, bathed in the soft golden light of the afternoon. Ground crews were visible, moving with practiced efficiency, unaware of the storm that had just passed miles above them. Amelia's eyes tracked the runway, noting the distance, the alignment, the subtle shifts in wind direction. She adjusted the throttle gently, letting the plane glide toward the tarmac like a bird returning home. Every minor vibration, every gentle sway, sent shivers up her spine, not of fear this time, but of a cautious respect for the machine she commanded. Meanwhile, in the cabin, the passengers were beginning to stir, some whispering to one another, sharing smiles and soft laughter that came from pure relief. Children clutched toys or the hands of parents, unaware of the intricacies of flight but fully sensing the tension that had filled the air earlier. Amelia could hear the faintest murmurs of conversation, the low rumble of nervous laughter, and it all brought a strange warmth to her chest. Despite the fear she had endured, seeing their reactions reminded her why she had chosen this path. Every seat, every life aboard this plane, had mattered, and now each one was safe. Her mind wandered to her own feelings, a complicated mixture of exhaustion and elation. Adrenaline still coursed through her veins, making her muscles tense and her thoughts race. She reflected on the critical moments that had brought them here, the sudden mechanical anomaly, the careful coordination with air traffic control, the rapid calculations that allowed her to adjust altitude and speed with precision. Every second had mattered, and yet, through it all, she had maintained the calm exterior that passengers and crew had depended upon. The weight of that responsibility was immense, and now that the immediate danger had passed, she felt it settle more heavily, like a cloak draped over her shoulders. Outside, the runway grew larger, and Amelia adjusted the plane's descent. She could feel the wind currents through the control yoke, subtle pressures that required constant attention. The tires of the plane touched the tarmac with barely a whisper, and she felt the gentle bounce as the aircraft's weight shifted and settled. The landing gear absorbed the impact, and for a moment, the plane seemed to sigh, a soft, mechanical exhale that mirrored the relief building within her. She guided it smoothly down the runway, slowing gradually, ensuring that every movement was deliberate and precise. Passengers began to relax visibly, some releasing their grip on armrests that had been white-knuckled moments ago. A young woman seated near the window smiled and whispered a quiet thanks to herself, perhaps still processing the reality that they were safe. Amelia allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile, though it was more a twitch of exhaustion than genuine levity. She knew that relief would come fully later, once the adrenaline faded and the weight of what had happened settled. The cockpit remained a sanctuary of focused calm. Amelia and her co-pilot exchanged a few quiet words, technical notes that were automatic, almost rehearsed, a routine that both grounded them and reminded them of their shared responsibility. Outside, the airport began to blur as the plane slowed, taxiing toward the gate. The engine's hum softened, and the vibrations through the floorboards became almost imperceptible. Amelia's shoulders loosened slightly, and for the first time in hours, she felt a fleeting sense of peace. The passengers' reactions were varied but unified by one emotion: relief. Some whispered prayers, others clasped hands in silent thanks, and a few wiped tears from their eyes. Amelia's gaze drifted over the cabin, taking in the scene. Each face reflected a story, a life temporarily suspended in fear and now returning to calm. The plane had carried more than bodies, it had carried hopes, fears, dreams, and the delicate fragility of human trust. Amelia's thoughts returned to the flight itself, replaying every detail with analytical precision. She reflected on how smoothly the descent had gone, how every control input had been precise, and how her years of training had culminated in this single moment. Her hands, resting lightly on the controls now, felt both heavy and empty at once, the weight of responsibility gone, but the memory of it lingering like a shadow. As the aircraft approached the gate, ground crew waved signals, guiding the plane with practiced expertise. Amelia followed their directions, taxiing carefully, her mind attuned to every subtle shift and sound. The wheels rolled onto the marked path, the engines now whispering as if tired themselves, carrying the weight of passengers and crew alike to a place of safety. Relief radiated in waves through the cabin. Amelia could sense it, feel it, almost taste it, a tangible acknowledgement of survival, of skill, of calm under pressure. Finally, the plane came to a complete stop. The engines quieted, and the gentle vibrations ceased. A profound silence filled the cockpit, broken only by the faint click of switches and the soft hum of onboard systems winding down. Amelia exhaled, long and slow, letting the tension leave her body in measured waves. She looked out the front window at the faces of ground crew approaching, nodding in recognition of a landing well executed. She felt a mix of exhaustion, relief, and a subtle pride, not the boastful kind, but the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing she had done her duty flawlessly. Around her, passengers began to stir, gathering their belongings, chatting softly, and preparing to disembark. Amelia's eyes lingered on them, noting their gestures, their smiles, their laughter, each one a testament to the calm and focus she had maintained throughout. She allowed herself a brief moment of reflection, understanding fully that this flight would stay with her for a long time, etched into memory with vivid clarity. Every sound, every motion, every emotion of the journey was now imprinted, a reminder of human resilience and the fragile, beautiful unpredictability of life. The cockpit lights dimmed as systems powered down, the last indicators flickering and then going dark. Amelia released the yoke, her hands trembling slightly from the intensity of the hours past. She sat back, letting her body sink into the seat, and closed her eyes for just a moment. Relief coursed through her veins, a physical sensation as tangible as the fatigue pressing down on her shoulders. She opened her eyes and looked forward again, toward the waiting gate, toward the end of a flight that had been fraught with tension yet concluded in safety. Passengers began to rise, preparing to leave the plane, some exchanging words with the flight attendants, others simply standing silently, savoring the return to solid ground. Amelia watched them, her mind slowly shifting from the technical calculations of the flight to the human reality of it. Every relieved smile, every gentle laugh, every whispered thanks became part of her own internal narrative, reinforcing the sense of accomplishment and relief. The plane had landed, passengers were safe, and Amelia, though exhausted and drained, could finally allow herself a deep, steadying breath. The flight had been a test, a challenge, a reminder of the responsibility she bore every time she took the controls. And now, as the wheels settled firmly on the ground and the aircraft came to rest, that responsibility transformed into a quiet, profound relief, mingled with the lingering echo of adrenaline that would take hours to fade completely. She had guided them safely, and for that, the world around her seemed momentarily still, as if acknowledging the delicate balance of skill, courage, and calm that had made it all possible. Paramedics and emergency crews were already gathering around the aircraft as it came to a complete stop. The whir of medical equipment being prepared, the shuffle of boots across the tarmac, and the muffled voices of team leaders created a symphony of controlled urgency. Amelia's eyes flicked toward the open cabin doors, where attendants were already helping passengers unbuckle and stand. She could see relief written on every face, yet there was still an undercurrent of tension, a reminder of what had just transpired. Some passengers clutched their children tightly, whispering reassurances that seemed more for themselves than for the young ones. Others leaned heavily on their companions, their hands shaking slightly as if they were still processing the intensity of the flight. The co-pilot spoke quietly, reviewing the final checklists, making sure that every system was powered down correctly. Amelia nodded almost imperceptibly, her gaze sweeping across the instruments one last time. Everything was normal, yet she knew that normal had been restored only through careful attention and split-second decisions. Outside, the paramedics moved quickly, their motions precise and practiced. Stretchers were brought forward, medical kits opened, and a few passengers were briefly examined for any lingering signs of distress. Amelia watched as one elderly man, still pale from anxiety, was checked by a paramedic. He offered a small, grateful smile, and she felt a flicker of warmth in her chest. The hum of engines gradually quieted, replaced by the chatter of ground crews and the soft murmur of passengers finally able to speak freely. Amelia's thoughts drifted momentarily to the moments that had led them here, the sudden alerts, the minor alarms, the tense seconds that seemed to stretch into eternity. She could still feel the echo of adrenaline, the heightened awareness that had kept her alert, focused, and in control. Every decision, every tiny adjustment, had mattered. Her heart was still racing slightly, but the rhythm was no longer chaotic. It was steadying now, aligning slowly with the calm of the world around her. Flight attendants moved through the cabin, helping passengers gather belongings and directing them toward the exits. Amelia noticed a young woman sitting near the front, tears streaming down her face, hands clasped together as if in silent prayer. She gave her a small, encouraging nod, and the woman's expression softened, a mixture of relief and lingering fear. Children looked around curiously, some still clutching their toys, others staring wide-eyed at the adults moving with a newfound sense of calm. Amelia's gaze lingered on them, recognizing the resilience and trust placed in her hands during those tense hours. Outside, the tarmac was alive with activity. Fire trucks had pulled back slightly, though their engines remained running, ready for any unexpected movement. Ground crews guided the plane carefully, signaling with bright orange batons. Amelia followed every instruction precisely, her hands steady on the controls, her mind still running through the mental checklist of landing procedures and safety confirmations. The weight of responsibility had not diminished, it had shifted now from active tension to a focused, calm oversight. She felt the subtle vibrations through the yoke as the aircraft taxied into position, and every movement required careful attention. The co-pilot murmured technical updates, and Amelia responded with concise acknowledgments, her voice calm despite the undercurrent of exhaustion. Outside, paramedics guided the last passengers down the steps, some supporting the elderly, others helping children step carefully onto the tarmac. Amelia's eyes swept across the scene, noting the efficiency, the teamwork, the quiet professionalism that had transformed a potentially chaotic disembarkation into a coordinated effort. The passengers, though visibly shaken, were moving with cautious relief, their expressions slowly softening as the reality of safety settled in. Amelia allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. She thought about the emotions coursing through her: exhaustion, relief, pride, and an almost imperceptible hum of lingering anxiety. The calm of the moment contrasted sharply with the intensity of the flight, yet she knew that the memory of that tension would remain vivid for hours, even days. Every passenger had trusted her implicitly, and that trust had been rewarded with safety. Her eyes moved to the co-pilot again, who gave a small, knowing smile. They shared an understanding that needed no words, a silent acknowledgement of the challenge overcome. The aircraft was now fully stationary. Engines idled quietly, and the final lights on the panels blinked in routine sequence as systems were powered down. Ground crew moved in closer, readying the plane for final inspection and maintenance checks. Amelia's hands rested lightly on the yoke, her muscles finally relaxing as the physical strain of constant alertness began to ebb. She felt the weight of the last few hours in her shoulders, a tangible reminder of the tension that had carried her through. Yet beneath it all, there was a profound satisfaction, a quiet acknowledgement that she had guided everyone safely to this point. Passengers were slowly moving toward waiting buses and transport vehicles, their conversations a mixture of nervous laughter and soft relief. Amelia's eyes followed them, recognizing the small, human gestures that marked their transition from fear to calm. Children waved goodbye to flight attendants, some still clinging to toys, some hesitantly stepping forward into the arms of parents. Amelia noticed a few passengers pausing, taking deep breaths, as if grounding themselves in the reality of solid ground beneath their feet. She smiled faintly, feeling a connection to each of them, even from her position in the cockpit. The co-pilot began shutting down communications, closing channels with air traffic control, and confirming that all reports of the landing and flight status were completed. Amelia's attention remained on the tarmac, watching the coordinated movements of ground crews and emergency personnel. Their professionalism, their calm in handling every detail, mirrored the focus she had maintained throughout the flight. Every action seemed synchronized, a dance of experience and training that ensured safety for all. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting long shadows across the tarmac and bathing the scene in warm light. Amelia felt a subtle sense of closure, a softening of the tension that had defined the past hours. She allowed herself a slow, measured breath, feeling the residual adrenaline settle into fatigue, mingling with relief and quiet satisfaction. The passengers were safe, the plane was secure, and the orchestration of human effort and skill had achieved its intended outcome. Amelia's mind wandered briefly to the idea of recognition, though she quickly dismissed it. The calm professionalism of the crew, the trust of the passengers, and the efficiency of emergency responders were enough acknowledgement. There was no need for fanfare. The satisfaction of knowing that she had maintained control, that she had guided everyone safely, and that the world inside the plane had been kept in balance, was a reward in itself. The last few passengers exited the plane, escorted by flight attendants who offered kind words, reassurance, and gentle smiles. Amelia observed the subtle gestures, noting how trust had transformed into relief. Fear into gratitude. The tarmac hummed with quiet activity, a testament to coordination, discipline, and human resilience. Amelia remained seated for a moment longer, letting the calm of the moment seep into her bones, grounding her after the heightened alertness of flight. The engines finally powered down completely, leaving a soft, peaceful quiet that felt almost surreal after the tension of the previous hours. Amelia leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes briefly, and allowed herself to feel the full weight of relief. She could still feel the lingering echo of adrenaline, the subtle tremors of a body accustomed to high stress, but the knowledge that everyone aboard the flight was unharmed provided a grounding certainty that allowed her to finally exhale. Her thoughts drifted to the passengers, the crew, the emergency personnel outside. Each had played a role in this safe arrival, whether directly or indirectly, and Amelia recognized that their collective effort had created a moment of calm after chaos. The plane was silent now, the passengers moved to safety, and Amelia sat in the cockpit, processing everything that had transpired. The sun continued to sink behind distant clouds, casting a soft glow that seemed to mirror the calm that was beginning to settle within her. Time seemed to stretch in this quiet moment. Amelia reflected on the lessons, the fleeting fear, and the relief that followed. She considered the precision required, the focus demanded, and the resilience necessary to maintain calm in the face of uncertainty. She felt gratitude, not only for the outcome but for the trust placed in her hands, the skills honed through years of training, and the unwavering dedication of every person involved in ensuring the safety of the flight. Finally, she exhaled fully, a deep, slow release that seemed to carry away the final remnants of tension. The cabin remained empty, the plane resting quietly, the hum of the engines now absent. Amelia opened her eyes and looked once more at the horizon, at the golden light stretching across the tarmac, and allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The flight had ended, the passengers were safe, and the responsibility she had carried with such intensity had been met with success. Relief, deep and lasting, settled over her like a gentle wave, and for the first time in hours, she felt the true weight of calm. Amelia remained in the cockpit, the quiet hum of the powered-down systems filling the space like a gentle reminder of the intensity that had just passed. Her eyes swept across the cabin, now empty, save for a few lingering crew members completing final checks and gathering loose items. She could feel the residual tension in her body, a coiled energy that had carried her through the flight now gradually softening, though her mind was still alert, still reviewing every decision, every input, every adjustment she had made. The adrenaline that had surged through her veins hours ago had not completely dissipated, leaving a subtle, persistent heartbeat in her chest that mirrored the rhythm of the aircraft itself, as if the plane and she shared the memory of the flight in a quiet, unspoken understanding. Her co-pilot sat beside her, quietly noting systems shut down, confirming reports with the faintest murmur of technical language that Amelia acknowledged with a nod. They shared a silent understanding, the weight of responsibility and the relief of its completion communicating more than words ever could. Outside, the airport was alive with the post-landing bustle, ground crew moving with efficiency, emergency personnel returning equipment to trucks, the distant chatter of passengers boarding buses or walking toward the terminal. Amelia's gaze softened, watching them, sensing the shift from fear and tension to calm and relief. The world outside seemed ordinary, almost serene, a stark contrast to the turbulence and uncertainty that had occupied the last hours of her flight. A soft vibration through the cockpit reminded her that the plane still held energy, still carried the potential of flight in its very structure, yet now it was dormant, resting after the exertion of carrying so many lives safely to the ground. Amelia allowed herself to relax slightly in her seat, though her fingers instinctively hovered near the controls, a subconscious gesture honed by years of practice. Her mind revisited moments from the flight, the sudden alerts, the minor adjustments, the rapid calculations that had ensured the plane's safe descent. Each movement and decision had been critical, each second had mattered, and the memory of that precision lingered in her consciousness like a delicate thread, both exhausting and exhilarating. The silence was broken by a soft knock on the cockpit door. A flight attendant appeared, her expression a mixture of concern and admiration. Amelia looked up and offered a tired but reassuring smile. The attendant's eyes conveyed what words could not: recognition of the calm and skill Amelia had maintained, the invisible but essential leadership that had guided everyone safely. Amelia nodded slightly, acknowledging both the compliment and the shared relief, aware that this moment, though quiet, carried its own weight of significance. From the cockpit, Amelia could see through the open doors that passengers were now moving in a coordinated flow toward waiting buses and terminal entrances. She observed the small gestures: a hand held for a child, a supportive arm around an elderly traveler, a quiet conversation offering reassurance. Each action reinforced the shared humanity of the situation, the fragile, yet resilient, network of trust that had carried them through uncertainty. Amelia's chest tightened slightly, a combination of lingering tension and the deep satisfaction of having met her responsibilities. The relief of others was tangible, almost physical, and it resonated within her, echoing the emotions she had suppressed during the flight to maintain control. Her co-pilot leaned back, exhaling softly, eyes still scanning the instruments one last time to ensure that all was in order. Amelia mirrored the gesture, allowing herself to feel the calm, subtle yet profound, that followed the storm of activity and heightened awareness. Ground crews were completing their final checks on the plane, moving around it with practiced precision, returning equipment to storage, and guiding vehicles along the tarmac. Amelia's eyes followed their movements, appreciating the seamless coordination that ensured every detail was managed with care and efficiency. The scene outside reflected a balance between human diligence and machine precision, a harmony that she recognized from within the cockpit's own ordered environment. The sun was now lower, casting long shadows across the tarmac, painting the world in hues of gold and amber. Amelia inhaled slowly, the scent of jet fuel and the faint aroma of the airport mingling in the warm air. She thought about the passengers, the crew, the emergency personnel, and the ground teams, each contributing to the safe conclusion of a flight that had tested their patience, skill, and composure. Her hands rested lightly on the controls, no longer guiding the plane but still connected to it in a way that felt intimate and protective. Each panel, each switch, each light was a reminder of the trust placed in her hands and the responsibility she had carried without faltering. A reporter from the media approached, careful to stay behind the boundary set by airport security. Amelia noticed the recorder and the microphone, the flash of cameras in the distance, and the subtle anticipation in the crew's movements. She felt a flutter of awareness, a shift from internal reflection to external scrutiny. Her co-pilot gave a small, supportive nod, and she adjusted her posture, preparing herself for the attention that was now inevitable. The questions would come, probing for details, for human stories, for heroism, but Amelia's focus remained steady, rooted in the truth that she had acted with calm and precision, not for recognition but for duty. The flight attendants had guided the last passengers off the plane, and Amelia finally allowed herself to stand, stretching slightly, muscles stiff from hours of tension and focus. She stepped onto the tarmac, the weight of her flight suit grounding her as she approached the area where reporters and crew gathered. The air was alive with the soft murmur of conversations, cameras clicking, and the distant roar of arriving and departing planes. Amelia's face remained composed, calm, even as she felt the subtle tremor of lingering adrenaline. She knew that the questions would come, that the story of the flight would soon be told, and that she would need to navigate not only the technical aftermath but also the human narrative. Crew members surrounded her, guiding her through the controlled chaos with quiet professionalism. The ground beneath her feet felt solid, reassuring, a stark contrast to the weightless uncertainty of earlier hours. Amelia's mind wandered briefly to the passengers' reactions, the children clinging to toys, the elderly expressing gratitude, the hushed conversations that slowly replaced fear with relief. Each detail reminded her of the human element that had been central to the flight, the delicate trust and reliance placed upon her and her co-pilot, and the collective effort that ensured everyone's safety. As reporters approached, Amelia spoke clearly and evenly, recounting the events with precision, yet maintaining a measured calm that reflected her true experience. She emphasized teamwork, training, and the coordinated effort of the crew and ground personnel. Her words were concise, factual, and imbued with quiet confidence, a reflection of the composure she had maintained throughout. The cameras flashed, recording every moment, but Amelia remained focused, aware that the narrative they captured would shape perceptions, yet determined to let the truth of the flight's success speak for itself. The co-pilot answered questions alongside her, offering technical explanations and complementing her account with details of the systems, communications, and procedures that ensured the safe landing. Amelia observed the interaction, feeling a sense of mutual respect and camaraderie, a silent acknowledgement of the challenges they had faced and the efficiency with which they had overcome them. The exchange was measured, professional, and grounded in reality, emphasizing competence and teamwork rather than dramatics or personal heroism. Throughout the interaction, Amelia remained conscious of the emotional resonance behind her words. She could see in the reporters' eyes the desire to capture a story of courage, yet she understood that the true story was one of preparation, focus, and calm under pressure. Her hands, resting lightly at her sides, conveyed steadiness, while her eyes reflected a quiet confidence, tempered by the knowledge of the responsibility she had carried. She allowed herself to convey reassurance, understanding that her composure would help shape the public perception of the flight's events and reinforce the confidence passengers placed in the airline and its crew. After the brief interviews concluded, Amelia returned to the cockpit for final checks, ensuring that all systems were secured and that the aircraft was ready for maintenance and eventual departure. The quiet of the cockpit enveloped her once more, a familiar and comforting environment where every control, every light, and every panel was a reminder of her role and her responsibility. She allowed herself a few moments to reflect, to process the weight of the flight, the relief of safety, and the subtle, lingering echo of adrenaline that marked the extraordinary experience. Stepping back outside, Amelia surveyed the activity around the plane. Ground crews were finishing inspections, emergency personnel were packing equipment, and the passengers had begun to disappear toward buses and terminals. The sun dipped lower, painting the tarmac in warm gold and orange hues, a visual echo of the calm settling over her and her crew. Amelia felt the gravity of the day, the significance of what had transpired, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the flight had ended not only in safety but in calm and order. She allowed herself a final deep breath, inhaling the scent of the airport, the subtle aroma of jet fuel, and the crisp air that marked the end of the day's operations. Her co-pilot joined her, and together they watched as the plane rested silently, a vessel that had carried human lives safely through uncertainty and now stood dormant, a testament to training, focus, and teamwork. Amelia felt a profound connection to the machine, the crew, and the passengers, a recognition that every part had contributed to a successful outcome. The plane was quiet, the passengers gone, and the emergency personnel and ground crews completing their final tasks. Amelia remained on the tarmac briefly, allowing herself to feel the full scope of relief, the culmination of intense focus, and the satisfaction of duty fulfilled. The day had tested every skill, every instinct, and every ounce of composure, and now it had passed. She looked to the horizon, the golden light fading, and felt a quiet sense of closure. Every life aboard had been safeguarded, every decision had counted, and in that moment, Amelia allowed herself to feel the calm and the profound relief that came from a mission completed successfully, with precision, care, and unwavering attention. The final moments of the day unfolded with a quiet grandeur, the airport bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, casting long shadows across the tarmac. Amelia stood near the cockpit, her eyes scanning the horizon as the last of the passengers and crew moved toward safety. The plane rested silently behind her, engines powered down, instruments dark, a vessel that had carried them through uncertainty and delivered them safely to solid ground. A calm had settled over the scene, yet Amelia could feel a heightened awareness stirring within her, subtle but undeniable, as though the world itself had shifted to recognize the events of the day. From a distance, the sound of powerful engines cut through the evening air, deep and resonant, drawing Amelia's gaze upward. 2 F-22 fighter jets appeared, slicing through the sky with precision and speed, their sleek forms glinting in the fading sunlight. A ripple of awe ran through her, but Amelia's focus remained steady, her mind assessing their movements, their alignment, their approach. These were not random aircraft, they were a calculated presence, deliberate and commanding, and Amelia instinctively recognized the significance of their arrival. As the F-22s approached the tarmac, their formation tight and exact, a sudden clarity came over her. Every detail of the flight, every decision made under pressure, every moment of intense focus and calm, had led to this acknowledgement. The jets moved with fluid precision, their presence both a tribute and a silent salute. Amelia felt a surge of emotion, a combination of relief, pride, and a profound sense of connection to something greater than herself. She stood still, letting the magnitude of the moment wash over her, aware of the unspoken respect conveyed by the F-22s. The fighter jets flew overhead, their engines a symphony of power and control, echoing across the airfield. Ground crews paused in their tasks, eyes lifting to the sky, sensing the significance of the aerial salute. The air was filled with a subtle vibration, a hum of energy that resonated through the tarmac and into Amelia's very core. She could feel it in her chest, a deep, vibrating acknowledgement of the skill, courage, and composure that had guided the flight to safety. This was a moment of recognition beyond words, a gesture that transcended routine or protocol, and Amelia allowed herself to absorb its full weight. Her co-pilot joined her, standing silently beside her, and together they watched as the F-22s completed their flyover, maintaining perfect formation and precision. The jets banked gently, engines roaring in controlled power, and Amelia felt a chill of exhilaration. The salute was more than ceremonial, it was an acknowledgement of the collective effort, of training met with excellence, of responsibility carried with unwavering focus. In that instant, the hours of tension, the meticulous attention, and the disciplined calm coalesced into a profound sense of fulfillment. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in a palette of gold, orange, and fading blue, casting long, dramatic shadows across the airport. Amelia's mind wandered briefly, recalling the faces of the passengers, the gestures of the crew, the coordination of the emergency personnel, all threads woven together into the tapestry of the day's events. Each element had contributed to the safe landing and the ensuing recognition. The F-22's presence was a culmination, a symbolic closure that validated every choice, every adjustment, every ounce of concentration exerted during the flight. As the jets began to ascend, leaving contrails that stretched across the sky like streaks of light, Amelia exhaled slowly, a deep release of tension mingled with a swelling sense of pride. She felt the weight of responsibility lift, replaced by an enduring awareness of accomplishment and the quiet thrill of recognition. Every movement of the jets had mirrored the discipline, precision, and focus she had maintained, a visual echo of the calm mastery that had ensured safety for every life aboard the aircraft. The ground around her gradually returned to normal activity, but the memory of the jet's presence lingered in the air, an indelible mark of respect and honor. Amelia felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest, an emotional resonance that spoke not of fame, but of validation for a duty carried with integrity and calm determination. She turned slightly to her co-pilot, meeting his eyes, and found in them the same recognition, the same unspoken acknowledgement that they had performed flawlessly under pressure and were now receiving the rare and profound salute of their peers in the sky. Time seemed suspended for a moment, the golden light casting a soft halo over the scene, the hum of the departing jets fading into the distance. Amelia felt a quiet serenity settle over her, a balance of relief, pride, and deep satisfaction. The passengers were safe, the plane rested securely, and the acknowledgement from the F-22s elevated the entire experience from mere survival to a moment of honor. She allowed herself a small smile, the kind born not of vanity but of true accomplishment, knowing that every decision, every instinct, and every moment of focus had mattered and had been recognized in the most powerful way imaginable. The airport gradually resumed its rhythm, vehicles moving, crews completing their tasks, passengers disappearing into the terminal, yet Amelia remained rooted in the moment, savoring the lasting echo of the jet's salute. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, leaving a soft, lingering glow that mirrored the warmth of the recognition she felt. Every heartbeat, every pulse of adrenaline that had accompanied the flight now settled into a calm resonance, a testament to the extraordinary circumstances of the day. Amelia turned her gaze back to the plane, the vessel that had carried so many safely through danger. She ran her hand lightly over the fuselage, feeling the solidity, the precision, the engineering that had partnered with human skill to achieve safety. The F-22s had flown in acknowledgement, but the real accomplishment was the quiet mastery and unwavering composure that had guided every moment of the flight. Amelia felt the culmination of hours of tension, calculation, and responsibility crystallize into a profound sense of closure. Her co-pilot spoke softly, words of shared relief and acknowledgement, and Amelia responded with a nod, her own voice barely above a whisper, resonating with quiet pride. The finality of the moment settled over them both, a peaceful affirmation that the challenge had been met and exceeded. Amelia allowed herself one last deep breath, the cool evening air filling her lungs, and felt a complete release of the lingering tension. The plane rested, the passengers were safe, and the sky above carried the emblem of respect, the F-22's salute, a lasting recognition of calm, skill, and courage. As twilight enveloped the airport, Amelia stood silently, absorbing the profound significance of the moment. The world seemed to pause briefly in recognition of what had transpired. Every passenger, every crew member, every instrument and calculation had been part of a delicate balance that had now been honored from above. Amelia knew she would carry this moment with her, not as fame or glory, but as a quiet affirmation of what human focus, preparation, and calm under pressure could achieve. The final echoes of the jets faded, leaving a serene quiet that seemed almost sacred. Amelia exhaled, long and deliberate, feeling the weight of accomplishment and relief intertwine. She looked back once more at the plane, her mind replaying the day's events, the tension, the focus, the collective effort, and finally the recognition that had transcended ordinary acknowledgement. In the fading light of day, Amelia felt a profound sense of closure and peace, a final affirmation that every life had been safeguarded, every choice had mattered, and every moment of calm and precision had been honored. The airport slowly returned to its ordinary rhythm, yet Amelia remained for a few moments longer, absorbing the stillness and the satisfaction that flowed through her. The plane, the crew, the passengers, and now the salute of the F-22s together formed a tapestry of courage, skill, and recognition that would remain with her forever. She allowed herself one last smile, deep, genuine, and quiet, knowing that the flight had ended, the mission was complete, and the acknowledgement from above had sealed a day that would remain etched in memory as a testament to calm, focus, and unwavering responsibility.